Hello, and welcome to the podcast about Transformers comics, toys, and everything in between. I'm Onyx Prime with my two co-hosts here.
Hi, I'm Computron.
Hi, I'm Kilobyte.
Moving on with our comic discussion for today's episode takes us to IDW Last Stand of the Wreckers. And as always, spoiler warnings. So if you haven't read it, we highly recommend this one. Go read it, come back, listen to the podcast. So I've also heard from some of my Earthlings that if you click and like this video or subscribe, that really helps us grow, and we really appreciate that, and thank you for it. Now, onwards with the podcast. Both Computron and myself have read this series already, but this is Kilobyte's first time, and we are excited to hear his thoughts, especially about this one. But before we dive into that, Computron, do you mind telling us some quick facts?
Yeah, and you guys know the usual. First things first, the hard stuff. So, the first issue for Last Stand of the Wreckers was released January 27th, 2010, and the fifth and final issue was released on May 19th, 2010. The writer was Nick Roche and James Roberts. The artist was Nick Roche as well, John Wyckoff, Guido Guidi, and Andrew Griffith. And the colors were by Josh Burkham and Joanne LaFuente. Okay, so now for the Iron Fist facts. In issue 1, Verity calls Rotostorm Hitman, a reference to professional wrestler Bret Hitman Hart, who is known for the pink wraparound sunglasses. Rotostorm is the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. In issue 3, Overlord paraphrases the master of Doctor Who fame when he requests that Decepticons please attend carefully. A famous line of the Masters from the original Doctor Who series, Logopolis. Did I even say that right? Logopolis?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I haven't seen Doctor Who, so I can't tell.
I haven't either. Anyway, notable enough, it's used again in the revived series episode The Sound of Drums. James Roberts has previously said that in his head, Overlord sounds like John Sim, the actor who had most recently played the Master at the time.
I like how it says most recently. Most recently to this when it came out in 2010. So when the 10th was, just to be clear.
Yeah, because wasn't that like the 10th actor at the time?
11.
Is it 11? Anyway, in issue 5, James Roberts has noted that Prowl never asks about the Autobot prisoners, the alleged reason the Wreckers were sent in the first place. Now, Mr. Kilobyte, would you please give us some summaries?
Will do. We follow a team of wreckers who are led by Springer into Garrus's 9, where they are tasked into retrieving Aquatus, which is located in an Autobot penitentiary facility under the command of Overlord. This is going to get interesting. And as always, this information has been taken from the wiki. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please go down to the comments and let us know who you think is going to survive.
We'll have an image on the YouTube version with all the faces and all the names, so you know who to comment in the below. So, with that, shall we get started?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
this is a good one. Our first scenes start off with a lot of fast-paced gore and action. Overlord assumes command of the Decepticon station on Garrus 9 Penitentiary and sort of takes over the whole place really quickly. Thoughts starting out?
Thoughts starting out, right? Okay, so I can't, you don't want to talk about this stuff later.
We will. We will get there. You hold tight. We'll get there. I'm talking about the takeover by a Phase 6er.
It was very scary, just seeing Overlord, and he just kind of goes crazy even to his own Decepticons. And, like, he just shows up. He's like, "Oh, you're in command." He's like, "Yeah, we're almost there." And he's like, "No, I'm gonna take command, and you're just gonna be offline." It's like shoots him in the face, and he just keeps going. It's like, "Okay, this is my place now, and you all follow me." And then he just starts casting havoc, throwing everybody and all the bodies around, and I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be good."
Right, right, and it sets the tone for what's gonna happen next, and it feels very what is it? It's very feels.
Unorthodox.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that one.
That's a very much of an understatement.
Yeah. Well, yes. We're gonna have some good scenes on this one for the YouTube version.
Kind of bouncing off of what Kilo said. It was clearly that he was ruling by fist, right? Like he was willing to give up the glory of the entire raid to the other guy because he was just wanting to just go on his psychotic ways. And we'll go really into more depth of the real reason why he's doing this. But right now we're just assuming that he wants to come into like Garrus 9 just because he's a psycho, but wants command, right? Because he's like, I was willing to give you the glory, and then
Yeah, and he's kind of a mystery character for lots of like new fans of this series because like a lot of people didn't see the Japanese run where he is originated from because there hasn't been really a dub for it. So when they see this new character just come in like 100% full insanity, it's kind of jarring. It's like, what's gonna happen next? Because this is not a character people are used to.
And it sets up the tone nicely because you from the beginning you're kind of like scared of him already.
Oh yeah.
You see all this craziness and you're like, oh, and then the title of the comics is The Last Stand of the Records, and you're like, I wonder what's gonna happen.
Sounds like Suicide Squad.
what a very interesting way to start a trilogy.
Yes. And it's only uphill from here. So we switch over to the Autobots and we're introduced to the Wreckers, the name of the comic. And what I want to do is actually have a little marker or red X over their faces for every single one that dies when they die during the video portion.
Yes.
So it should
Nobody
be fun.
has screen space for that, man.
Oh, we'll find a way. But if that spoils anything, this comic has been out for a while, so please read it. So, who are the records for this issue? Does anyone want to talk about them? Have any theories? Who's gonna live? Who's gonna die? Go.
Well, we could start with the newbies. We come face to face with the new group that's joining the Wreckers. So we got Iron Fist, Pyro, Rotostorm, Guzzle.
Yep.
It's only those four, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, and then we met them on Ultra Magnus's ship, right?
Yep.
Verity was there, and so was Mr. Magnus himself.
Yeah. Well, at least for like the new ones, the new recruits, because I think Magnus and Verity were already the Wreckers.
Yeah, so you named the new recruits. The whole roster though, and we'll get to one of them later, is going to be Springer, Perceptor, Topspin, Guzzle, Rotostorm, Cup, Velocity, Pyro, Twin Twist, and Iron Fist.
Is it Velocity or Verity?
Velocity.
Is it Velocity?
Nope, it's probably Verity, isn't it?
Verity, yeah, because it's
Verity.
a human.
Oh, I spelled it wrong. All right, big X over my face. I'm dead already. I need to fix that. So yeah, who do you think's gonna survive out of this?
Well, I like Iron Fist. I like Iron Fist, and I like the I like Iron Fist because he's I don't know, a smart tailpipe kind of guy.
I like him because he's kind of kind of cute because he's a fan of the Wreckers, so he gets very excited when he starts meeting them, and it's very very nice to see.
Wait,
Yeah.
would you say that he's the medic there? I'm not too sure because he was doing like these checkups right before everybody left.
Yeah, I think he has a background in I don't know if it's engineering or something, but I know they kind of hint at him having a previous job that was not fighting, so he used to be in a lab somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, and he made some toys, some very dangerous toys.
Yes.
Say the least. To say the least.
Well, when I first started reading, I knew, because seeing Overlord and then seeing the name, I knew people were gonna die. I thought maybe that the recruits were usually like the candidates because they're new, so they're easy, and then the other ones have a backstory.
Oh, you mean plot armor?
Yeah, plot armor. So I think my first impression was recruits will die. Everybody else that's been out for a while that everybody knows is probably gonna survive.
Okay.
Yep.
Shall we move to the next bit then?
We shall.
Before we start in there, because I want to talk about one Autobot specifically before we talk about who lives and who dies. And
Okay.
that one Autobot that we witnessed, because Overlord did come in, right? And this is before the Wreckers showed up. We first meet Fort Max.
Oh yeah.
And, Fort Max doesn't have a very good time with Overlord.
Oh yeah. He gets trapped on that planet for over 2 years, right?
Yep. and pretty much tortured. Like he Overlord, after beating Formax, threw him to the masses, and well, the Decepticon masses had some chunks.
Yep.
Just some chunks.
They had some chunks to rip off, should I say?
Yeah.
So scary.
Before we start with the Wrecker's mission, Springer says one last thing to everybody. Like, he's agreeing. So he's like, so that's the plan. What could possibly go right? ... Which from experience sounds like, things are going to end up going wrong and terribly wrong. And you'd be right. Everything goes wrong and terribly wrong. And it's really funny to me, like a few panels after everything's going wrong. So Overlord kind of says something that, as when the Autobot first touches down, Verity is launched underground from a hole and lands in front of Overlord, who says, now things go from bad to much, much worse. Which feels like it was completing that Bringer quote to me. And it just like sets the tone again. It's like, oh boy, is she gonna die?
She did look like an ant in front of Overlord.
Oh yeah.
Did.
He's big compared to normal bots.
That actually was one of the things that kind of bugged me was they cue the scene after that to the other team that crashed down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then after they re-cue back, you see that they somehow managed to get away or run somewhere, and I'm like, oh, or Verity managed to back up and Rotostorm being Rotostorm. But anyway, like I was sitting there, go, I kind of wanted to see if she dodged Overlord or something like this.
It's not fair.
I need to see it because you can't just go from standing in front of him to not standing nowhere near him.
No, what we do see though is we go from this scary, intense moment to a comedy bit brought to you by Rotostorm, who is confronted by Overlord and tries to, combine with his famous catchphrase, Wreckers combine. I love the next 3 panels. Same 3 scenes, everyone's just flat face. And then Rotostorm goes, well, I thought it was funny, and then Overlord starts to laugh very menacingly before he literally kills Rotostorm with his finger guns. Mark down 1 for Wrecker's death.
Mr. Roto, the funniest of them all. The funny guy always dies, right?
Bwah, 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 bwah.
That hurt me so much. I was hoping he'd die, and then he's the first one.
Yeah, he just stood there and died.
Well, he went out like it kind of reminds me of Dragon Ball Z with Frieza's little finger death pew pew gun.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, Mr. Overlord, why do you even bother with guns if you can use your fingers? I don't know.
If that's all for that, shall we move on to the next deaths?
If we have to.
If we have to. Perfect. So we find out that Twin Twist and Topspin are branch sparks, meaning they feel each other's pain. They're pretty much siblings, but they're on separate teams on this mission. Well, one of them ends up getting captured and tortured pretty bad. And at this point, the plot point where we're with the other team, you need a bot to unlock the gate to get to Aquidus, right?
Yes.
I believe that's how you.
Yeah. I'm probably saying it wrong. Let me know in the comments.
It's Leviosa.
So they needed like a sacrifice a bot or something, and it needed to be someone who's like volunteering. And Topspin volunteers to help out his twin twist brother from suffering. So we had a double whammy right there, which if it helps one person to stop suffering, that's probably what I would do as well. What's your thoughts on that?
That was so sad, man. It's just, I didn't want it to happen. I'm like, how is he gonna get out of there and not get tortured anymore and survive? Sacrifices himself.
Well, he's not only sacrificed himself, he sacrificed his brother, right? So,
Yeah.
and so he knew, like, honestly, if he was feeling the same thing the brother was feeling from the torture and knew what was going on, because there was brief moments where they said he could almost see what was going on with the other one, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's a mercy kill in my book. That's not like double assisted suicides like they were saying earlier. I was like, no, it's more of a mercy kill. Like if that was like me and my brothers. Sorry, I'm putting me out of my misery as much as you.
Yeah.
That was tough.
Poor dudes, but it's not over.
I love this is one of my favorite the favorite things from the Wreckers comics is they don't go happily ever after in this comic.
They don't go quietly into the night. So there comes a scene where a bunch of Decepticons are approaching on to a group of wreckers and they need to get away. And so one of them volunteers, Pyro, who's talking about his big story on how he wants to die in a blaze of glory and how he's going to fight so much that Optimus Prime himself would be proud of him because, he's very brave and stuff. So he volunteers to stay behind to fight all the Decepticons by himself, only to not do that, only to last maybe a second and scream in pain while he does it. Very sad and messed up. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and he even modeled his body to look like Optimus Prime,
Exactly.
and where he could, of course. And it's just, man, it was all of this is sad. This is all tough.
Well, the first time I read this, I was sad, but the second time I read this, I'm like, oh, I don't think he's gonna go out like the way he says he's gonna go out.
Yeah, that blaze of glory, no, got
No,
denied. He got torn apart.
he did
Literally.
not ride the eternal shiny to the Valhalla.
No. Which takes us to our epic conclusion with the Wreckers versus Overlord, and what a battle to witness. Guzzle gets ripped in half, very much like Jazz from the 2007 movie.
Yeah, there goes another one.
There goes another one. Bwah, 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 bwah. Springer's face. Sorry. Springer's face is ripped off. Everyone's guns is ablazing. Iron Fist pulls out this epic move, detonating explosives that were planted inside of Overlord. Unfortunately, Iron Fist isn't going to make it home from this one, I think. What's your thoughts on this entire epic fight?
He's the good boy to make it out of the way alive.
He deserves to make it out. He's the good boy, but
He's currently staring at Overlord all by himself.
well, he's the one I want to live.
How does he survive this fight? I can't remember.
Well, you see, the gun that Springer shot at Overlord wasn't necessarily some sort of like Gatling gun or anything. It had some explosives in it inside the bullets. And like last episode, I said we witness Swiss cheese.
Jeez. It reminds me heavily of the moment of the Terminator, where it's like just his endoskeleton is coming out of the fire.
Yeah. If you notice, like, did you see that his skull or his face was a skeleton shape?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are people's thoughts overall with this series? What's anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, well, we're missing somebody. There is a wrecker we haven't talked about, and he shows up in a blaze of glory, like cool guys don't look at explosion kind of meme. Where before all of this happened, the wreckers are flying through space and they find a Decepticon ship that has a bunch of holes and has a signal asking for help. And when they get there, the ship explodes and they're like, "Oh, what happened?" And from the explosion, we see Impactor riding the blast towards the Autobot ship and asking permission to board.
Right,
That's
and he
such a
sort of
good
just
scene.
joins the crew.
Yep, he's the one that killed all those Decepticons and blew up that ship. And I'm like, okay.
Reminds me of Master Chief
Oh
when
yeah,
it was a Halo 2 where he just blows up a ship and just
Falls from the
flies.
sky.
Yeah. And I was like, right at that moment I was reading it in comic, I was like, for a brick, he flew pretty good.
Yep. So I thought that scene was amazing.
anything else?
There is a scene, this is way going back, when the Autobots are landing on Garrus 9.
Yeah.
They use some drop pods to access the penitentiary, and some of the drop pods get all the Decepticons were waiting, so they start shooting at the drop pods, and they get a lot of holes and everything. So we see Perceptor just poke his upper body out of a hole and start sniping everybody, and I'm like, okay, yeah, stability. The best sniper we've had in the history of Transformers is Perceptor, the scientist turned sniper.
Very
He
scary.
can do everything.
Hey man, if anything, like Wait, so you guys remember like what episode was it when I think it was Megatron Volume 4 when we were going over all the
Spotlight.
spotlights and Preceptor had a spotlight, and what was the bot? It was a a
Combiner.
combiner that he just shoots in the face and kills, right?
Yeah, Monstructor.
Yeah, and now he's got to beef up his game. Preceptor's like the John Wick of this whole entire thing, man.
Someone killed his eye, and now he wants revenge. Yeah. So, Rodstar rating. What would you guys give this one?
5.
Is it out of 5?
Yeah, out of 5.
This is a 5 for me. I'm not gonna sugarcoat or anything.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it a 4.5. Good stuff.
Excuse me.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Good stuff. It's good stuff. Okay. I'll tell you why. The action's good stuff. The gore, good stuff.
Was it because it was out of order or kind of out of sync?
No, it's more like after reading, because I've read this specific comic a couple times, because I read it alone. I read it when me and Computron read it, and I read it before that, and I read it with just
Kilobyte.
now. It's some of the cheesy lines. There's a few sprinkled in this comic. Like it just felt like, oh, eye rolly cheesy. But that is in itself Transformer-like. But it didn't tickle me right.
I feel like they do that a lot with like Suicide Squad type characters, and now I'm not trying to reference Suicide Squad from DC, but like in even in action movies where this group of mercenaries or this group in the military that kind of does these type of mission where they go in and they don't expect to come out. With
Yeah.
all the tension and everything, they always have to have a funny side to it.
Well, I don't mind the funny part. I'm talking more like the cheesy lines, and I'll throw up a couple of examples on the video one because I can't remember off the top
So
of my
what
head.
you're
It was just,
telling me
yeah, go ahead.
so what you're telling me is the only thing I gotta do to get you to turn this into a 5-star is to have you read a G.I. Joe comic.
No, G.I. Joe comics are all 0 out of 5 route stars. You can't convince me otherwise. All right.
So
Any other thoughts?
to recap the death, we have Top Spin, Twin Twist, Pyro, Rotostorm, Springer, Guzzle, and I think that's it. 7?
Are we gonna be counting Fistotron or Iron Fist?
So yeah, unfortunately, Iron Fist dies at the end of the comic. He turns out he had a bullet in his head that was slowly approaching on his brain, took him out. And yes, Guzzle gets ripped in half. He looks dead. He acts dead. He's not dead. They show him again in another panel, riding off into the sunset with Impactor, and we'll see him again. Springer has his face ripped off. He's out for the rest of the Overlord battle. He looks dead. He's in a coma, we find out.
Live.
Will we see him again? Who knows?
Who knows?
So if you felt bad on any of those, well then now you feel better.
Yeah. So listeners, let us know in the comments how many you got right and which ones were the saddest to you.
Yes.
I'm laughing at the irony of somebody getting ripped in half at living, but somebody with the bullet slowly going to their head. Just, not, you're dead. Get out of here.
Right. They couldn't do Cybertronian surgery to remove it.
Yeah, something like Tony Stark's, shrapnel into his eye or something.
Well, that's a little harder to do because they're all metal. So we don't have any emails for you today, but if you would like to get in contact with us, you can send us an email at swervebarpodcast@gmail.com. Does anyone want to take us out or read the last bit while I am on mute while there's an impactor going?
I can do it. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing it with your friends and subscribing. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, till all are one.
Till all are one.
Till all are one.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Swerve's Bar Podcast. You can also find us on Twitter at Swerve's Bar. If you're interested in more content, try checking out the spin-off D&D series, Transform and Roll Out, Rise of the World Killers.